how do we as Christians relate to the supernatural events of the world? This is Systematic Ecology. We are the priests of the geeks. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, joined by two wonderful young men. One of them appeared here a little later than the others, but we love him anyways. John Erdely, explain yourself to the class. Uh, who are you? Why are you late? Why should I not demote you?
Hi, I'm John Transylvania. I am MC Ashley's verbal abuse victim. I have 3 children. I went grocery shopping at 3 p.m. and didn't realize it had already hit about 5 p.m. With just a short grocery trip is extended, multiplied exponentially by having little ones around. So, my fault for being late. I showed up late to the
Uh,
class.
I'm giving you a 0 for the day. Matthew Winter is here as well, my model student, showing up on time. Even talked to the professor and buttered him up a little bit. How's it going, Matthew?
Good. Today's a good day.
Okay, I'm glad to have it because we are discussing something really fun. It's a bit of a sequel episode to something John and I did last year, where we talked about, the Christian response to the supernatural. There's a little bit of, a little more of that. So before we get there, actually, what have you guys been geeking out on recently?
Well, actually, the whole family, me, the missus, and the children, except for Luna because she's 3, have been playing Astrobot, the new PS5 game featuring the little lovable robot character who's flying through the PlayStation universe and seeing all these kind of like chibi-fied, rescuing these chibi-fied versions of other PlayStation mascots like the God of War, Sly Cooper, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, some other stuff. It's a really fun. It's actually I want to say the best platformer game I've played since Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
Wow.
Okay, all right. Matthew, how about yourself?
So, recently downloaded the Lego Star Wars, the deluxe edition.
Ooh,
It was on a super sale on the Switch. I paid $11.99. It's all 9 games
not bad.
plus Rogue One, plus there's like some Mando characters, Andor. So it's almost all of the content, and it was like $12.
Hey,
So I'm like, wow. So I'm gonna grab this. So I've been going ham on Lego Star Wars, and I did after our last recording go ahead and watch the new Gundam. So I went ahead and did that. And I don't know. Today's Thursday, which means tomorrow is Friday, which means I am already getting ready for the third episode of Daima.
okay, yeah. Me, I'm continuing to watch The Penguin. Still falling in love with that show. It is like we discussed before in the What's New episode. Just letting the villain be a villain, and you kind of just like enjoying the journey. So that's it for what we've been geeking out on, guys. Our discussion today is once again, as previously discussed, the Christian response to the supernatural. So John and I did that episode. A little refresher for everyone. What are our personal definitions? What do we mean when we say supernatural and paranormal?
When I think of supernatural, anything that is above the average, I want to say human experience, the anything that cannot be explained by rational or easy definitions, things that in your mind shouldn't be able to happen or should be like dreamlike or almost exceptional, that supernatural I imagine is fantasy almost.
Matthew?
What? Oh, let's see. Paranormal refers to events or experiences that are considered to be beyond the scope of scientific understanding.
Hmm, there you go.
Nerd.
Simple enough. I mean, yes, I agree with my co-host here. It is things that are extra normal, things that do not naturally appear regularly. It's something that could possibly be identified as a natural occurrence. We just don't have the data for it as of yet. It's different from something like a miracle, which is something that can never be replicated in nature. It is far beyond the extra normal, the power of the Almighty, and all that. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with today. So, what is it about stuff like this that gets us so interested in like researching them and documenting them and watching videos and all that?
I think the same reason we love fantasy, science fiction, and all these characters and books and comics and things is because they're above our average experience. It's something incredible or fun to imagine or think about that kind of strikes a special place in our mind that captures our imagination, and it's something that makes us feel. We feel stuff, fuzz. I don't know, not warm fuzzies, but you know what I mean. You get like excitement out of thinking about something supernatural or paranormal, and it captures your
Yeah,
imagination a little bit.
It's the
Matthew.
yeah, yeah. It's uh it's the mystery for me. It's the what is that? And
Hmm.
then when I was younger, and then as I've gotten older and I've gotten more into understanding my faith and some of those things, it is a reminder to me that there is more to this world than we can see.
Oh yeah. And for me, it's always been that fascination, kind of like what we mentioned earlier, of like, that's not normal. That's not what's supposed to happen. Like, you don't move things with your mind. You're not supposed to be able to touch an object and view its history. Like, you're not supposed to see a ghost. You're not supposed to see a vampire or what have you. These things aren't normal. So, if these things are real, what does that mean? Can we document them? Can we figure out, if how to work everything there?
Using
Is
the force in
dowsing
the
real?
background.
Is telekinesis real? Yes. Ho- if this is something that actually exists, how do we study it? Is it possible to replicate it? So that's what fascinates me personally.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, John and I went through this last time. So unless you've remembered something else that you've repressed, which I think I have, John, uh, you don't need to say anything. But Matthew, do you have any paranormal events that you've experienced in your life?
um, Not really.
Okay.
Like interestingly enough, it's something I've always been interested in, but it's not paired to a specific event for me. So I will say it is basically part of just living in Washington. We believe in Bigfoot and aliens and ghosts and all the thing. It's just, it's part of the water that I swim in. But outside that, I don't necessarily have personal experiences from maybe once or twice, perhaps possibly seeing something that could have been Bigfoot.
Okay. Fair enough. John, have you regained any repressed memories from since last time?
Repressed memories. Um, I don't think I have anything new to add to my supernatural experiences except for maybe a few uncanny occurrences in our house where things are getting knocked over or
Hmm.
you know, just things where I'm just like, that's kind of weird. Like that shouldn't have that was sitting perfectly normal. There's no reason, no little tiny bit of wind pressure that should have knocked a solid object over like that. But
Okay. Fair enough. I don't remember what I said last time. And if I was a more dutiful person, I would
old
definitely have
man,
re-listened to that episode. Yes, but I am old and I forget things. So if I'm repeating something from last time, that's on me. Um, I did work forever ago at my old high school at night, and would every now and then see something moving out of the corner of my eyes, a potential shadow person. But what really got me is one particular night where I heard basketballs dribbling in a very dark gym,
Mm,
and there was no one in there but me. So not exactly comforting.
mm,
There was a rumor that there was a ghost. Everyone called her Phyllis, I think, that inhabited. There were two different buildings. She was in the older build, excuse me, the newer building. So there's that. And I don't think I ever actually personally encountered her, but I definitely saw things out of the corner of my eye at times, maybe questioned things. But I do want to share a story from my childhood that I don't remember because I was too young and dumb to know what's going on. But my mother will tell the story of how when I was about 18, 19 months old, my grandparents, and I were in the mall when those still existed. And as we were in the clothing store, I walked away from them, being a kid, and they turned their back. I was gone. They looked around. They found me outside that store, next to a fountain with an older man who was just making sure that I wasn't like falling into it. And when they got me, made sure I was okay, my grandfather and mother turned to talk to the man, and he was gone. So my mother to this day will claim that that was either my guardian angel or another angel looking out for me, or potentially some other supernatural entity. So there's that. All right,
So
go ahead.
I'm a liar. There's an entire job I had that I forgot about. That I remembered when you talked about you were working for the school at night or whatever. So let's see, what year is this? Okay, so about 15 years ago, for a couple years, I was a security guard for the Washington State Department of Ecology. Now, this is a huge building. Like, it could be a hospital. Like, this place is massive. And so, um, couple, like, all kinds of stories about the place. But the two things I personally experienced is just sitting there at my desk watching all the cameras or whatever. And so there was 3 elevator bays, and the one midway down the building, on the second floor, the elevator would just open.
Mm,
It,
no
it was
rhyme or
so
reason.
strange. No rhyme or reason. And then there would be singing down at the far end of the building when no one was in the building.
Oh no. Nope, nope, nope.
Yep. Like, I would check the sign in sheet. No one signed in. I would do my rounds just to make sure that no one's there. Of course, by the time you get there, there is no singing. You only hear it far off from the other side of the building. Once you're there, it's gone.
Oof.
That
So
sounds
there's
exciting.
those. But those are always related. The elevator would open, and then you would get the singing. Um, and then the other thing, down under the building, there was an equipment bay, just inside the garage where they would come in after doing their ecological whatevers. Um, one night I was doing my rounds down there, and you know how heat looks, how it's all wavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was just this wavy thing in the. Yeah.
Oof. All right.
I didn't go through the room or finish my rounds that time through. I went back out the way I came.
You know what? Smart. And that's why you survived.
Space time continuum,
Something
shimmering,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
wibbly
There's all
wobbly,
kinds
timey
of other
wimey stuff.
stuff. Oh yeah, all
Yeah.
kinds of other
Yeah.
stuff purported to happen there, but those are the things that I personally.
Mm.
But yeah, no, my buddy saw pillars of light floating across the field behind the thing. He got pushed down the stairs by nothing.
Oof.
Oh yeah, all kinds of stuff. So fun place, and I got to work in that building all by myself. Hooray!
That's how I felt at that school sometimes at night. It's like I'm completely alone and vulnerable. I don't like that.
Seen too much
So
supernatural.
yeah, well, we'll get there in a bit. So in regards to all this, why should Christians care about these matters? Like, yeah, sure, it's fun and everything to research, but why specifically Christians?
Well, basically, the ramifications of an unseen or above the natural, existence, the ramifications of not believing or basically being the Christian equivalent of a flat earth atheist in the face of the supernatural is would be detrimental to a spiritually minded, open minded kind of walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, I think a lot of Christians don't care, just because we have the easy way out answer of, oh, it's all demons. And then so we put it away in the back of our brain, and every time something happens, we're like, oh, that's demon. Yeah, okay, yep, that's a demon. And that is the extent of our how do I put it? That is the extent of the mind that we give to it, is just
Yeah.
Closed-minded,
yep,
quick explanation, basically.
Yep.
yep.
That's even if someone is willing to admit demons exist.
That's true. We do live in a world where there are Christians that don't believe in demons. I do
Yeah.
forget these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, because if I'm taking my scripture a little seriously, if I'm reading it as literally as I normally do, I see fantastical things that happen there that do not occur within a natural world. And that
Hmm.
tells me there is a spiritual world,
Right.
one that I am not able to see. The earlier image I used, if you're on YouTube, was the image of Elisha opening up his servant's eyes to see the armies that were defending them.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen until Elisha asked for God to open his servant's eyes.
Yeah.
So that tells me that God, more than likely for our own good, does not always allow us to see the spiritual around us, because we'd probably freak out.
Right.
And I'll end up as our own pushing a little HP Lovecrafts, thinking that things were meaningless and we were never going to win against anything. So, yeah, to not look at that and go, well, those are just stories, or to say, like, well, that happened for them. That doesn't happen anymore. It just seems so antithetical to a thinking mind that likes to actually live in a world of rationality. So I have to pursue that because I believe in some very supernatural things. My best friend was born in the manger, grew up, died on a cross, and came back to life. That is not something that happens in the world.
Right. Right. A man who is also God, and yet died, but God did not die.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're
So
all
uh,
mystics, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I like the definition of a Christian mystic, even though it has the word mystic in it, and that has a lot of like connotations that people can misinterpret. But
yes.
basically, you believe in the mystical, the fantastic, like angels, demons, but more than that, spirits and otherworldly stuff.
Yeah.
And you brought the demons. Might as well fold this question into the next one. Like, is there a wrong way to approach the supernatural? Is there something wrong with attributing everything that goes bump in the night with a demon?
Um.
Yes, I believe that there is I mean, with anything, there's a right way and a wrong way to approach something. If you can be extreme, like Matthew was saying earlier, where you can attribute everything to demons. You're like, oh, that's a demon, everything's demon. Well, then that kind of cheapens, something that isn't demonic in nature and could be, like a scientific thing we could explain,
Mhm.
and it kind of closes you off to opening your mind to the possibility of like theory of relativity and some other things that could be
Yeah.
explained with science if you think a little bit outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah, and for sure. And I have my theories. But so I feel about that question similar to how I feel about like biblical interpretations and certain more what I would call advanced hermeneutical ideas. Um, I think some people have to have a simplistic view of the supernatural. Just because of their own life experiences or their own capacities, either emotionally or mentally or whatever. I am going to give grace there and say that while it is more complex and nuanced, I'm not going to judge them for just saying it's all demons. Just like I don't, I mean, I do sometimes, but I do believe there are certain people that have to just read the Bible and take it at face value. Because if there's any more depth to it or any more level to that, you can make it mean whatever you want according to them. So they believe the way they need to have faith. And
Yeah.
I don't want to. oppose that. I don't want to say, well, have you looked at it this way? And have that be the question that just deconstructs their entire belief system.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's totally a wrong way to have a view and approach the supernatural here because, look, yeah, if it's out there in the world, which I say it is,
It is.
yeah, to then go out and say every single thing that happens is a result of demonic activity is a poor view of the supernatural because,
Mhm.
angels exist too, by the way,
Yes, they do.
following that train of thought, for following those set of rules. So to attribute things that happen miraculously would be evil if we said everything that happens is a result of a demon,
That's true.
especially something positive. And yeah, we are told, Satan appears as an angel of light. So sometimes he can even look like it might be angelic in origin. That's why we're told to test the spirits.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul wasn't just writing that because he had nothing better to do. It's because it's something that could legitimately happen to a Christian during their walk. To this person says, "Hey, I've got this new revelation from God, and it contradicts something else from before." So,
Sure.
hey, test them and make
Well,
sure
yeah.
everything lines up. So to just be
Hmm.
in this mindset of everything's demons, well, sure, that's good for that false prophet there. But what about the person who is actually legitimately speaking in tongues and someone's there to interpret them? We're
Exactly.
told to listen to that. What
Yep.
happens if someone is able to actually heal someone?
Hmm.
That is extra normal. That's not demonic in origin. Someone has
Sure.
just been healed. So, to Christians out there who just disregard everything, I should have a little more grace, as Matthew suggested, but it does irk me
Yeah.
that they don't let their minds wander far enough from the safety of the confines of just what makes them feel good,
Right.
because we're not called to be there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then you talk about New Testament, you talk about Paul specifically, because here's the thing, people. Paul had the for demon at his disposal, but instead, what does Paul describe? What does he say? He says that there are powers of the air. He talks about spirits of the earth. The biblical authors believed there was a lot more to this than just demons, or they would have just used the word demons.
Yes, absolutely. So, like, how do we prevent ourselves from falling into these traps to have a wrong view of such things?
As with anything, you just need to listen. You need to listen. Doesn't mean you need to accept or believe everything you hear, but you kind of weigh everything against the knowledge that you know is true, and you can entertain some things. It doesn't mean you have to, don't take a bullet for, all the random beliefs out there, but keep some things in the back of your mind, like oh, you might have an experience and you might think of something that someone said one time and you'd be like, "Oh, that reminds me of what this person said about, spiritual activity or, you know, um, like electronic voice phenomena or residual hauntings and things like that." Keep it in the back of your mind because you know, what is it? Science fiction is just predecessor to science fact. I mean, it's I've heard things like
Often.
that, but you might have a sort of an understanding of theory of relativity until you experience something that's just like completely off the wall that actually might prove that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree because it's this idea of just avoiding becoming a closed-minded person in general just because that doesn't fit, my POV, the way I look at the world is very harmful because it's so easy to be taken advantage of. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of people who go too far to the other side, and then everything's paranormal and all that, where they get taken advantage of. So
Right.
it's about being sober-minded. It's
Hmm.
about figuring out, okay, well, the Bible says this. Do I either trust it or not? I trust it. So
Hmm.
therefore, if these things are out there, how do I hand wrestle with that? How do I deal with that? And then be prepared
Hmm.
just in case something happens.
Yeah. If you believe, and it's not just them. I've heard this idea before, but if you believe the guys who run Haunted Cosmos and similar ilk to those guys, the answer is to name it, to
Hmm.
to literally learn what spirit it is, because these spirits have names. They are ancient. The spirits and powers and demons that are around now are the spirits and demons and whatever that were around at the beginning. So however old the earth is, they've been here a lot longer than we have.
Yeah.
And they have names. Some of them have gone by many, you know. But because when we know what it is, we can learn its attributes and all those sorts of things and say, okay, is that you again?
Yeah.
I know who you are. You have no power here.
Absolutely. But as we go on here, we get to this idea of okay, so some people would say you think you Christians, you're just willing to believe anything is supernatural. And there are skeptics out there who would challenge some things, challenge miracles, challenge spiritual gifts and stuff like that. But skepticism in and of itself is not an evil thing. So like
No.
when should we ourselves be skeptical and when should we be more willing to believe?
Hmm, that's a good question.
It's good to be concerned about what information you're believing and
Mhm.
check it against the views that you hold dear to yourself, and you can be open to some new ideas, and just make sure it's not if it's not contradictory to something that's kind of like a pillar or that is like a non-negotiable. You can be open-minded. Like, I am open-minded to eating different foods that normally like I don't eat. Like um
Is that a personal attack?
it's like eat some vegetables, Christian, but you know what I mean. It's like
Never.
like just believing in vegetables doesn't mean you have to eat it.
Yeah. Matt, how can you possibly follow up that?
What was the question?
When should we be skeptical and should we be more willing to believe?
We should always be skeptical. I am skeptical of everything. The things that I am sure of that I don't have some amount of skepticism of are very, very small.
Okay.
Yeah, like I know that Jesus came and that he died and that he got back up somehow, because that is what historically makes the most sense.
Yes.
Everything else is us just trying to figure out what happened and what it means. Um,
Hmm.
like, uh, and yet I'm a theologian and a philosopher and all of these things, but skeptically so. So, um,
Yes.
I uh, I think skepticism is healthy. But there definitely needs to be a point where you're like, okay, I can't disprove the thing. So what is it?
Hmm. Yes.
Because what can happen is we can almost worship our skepticism and say, you know what, I can't disprove this thing or understand it yet, but I will one day. Or you can't disprove or understand the thing, so it is supernatural. By definition, paranormal. There becomes a point where it crosses that line. You can't explain it, therefore, by definition, it is paranormal. Accept it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've caught myself several times on the show before as a skeptic who wants to believe.
Yeah.
You want to see that in action? Like, go check out some Friday Night Frights. Joe Day and I do once a month Friday on the Systematic Ecology YouTube page and on the podcast form. But I say that because wouldn't it be cooler? if some of these things were out there, wouldn't it be cooler, like, if I grabbed something with my mind?
Oh yeah.
Or, if the Loch Ness Monster was real, or, if I could actually see an angel, like, that'd be great. But there needs to be evidence behind those things before I just say, flat out, I think Nessie's real. You know, you know, I believe, this paper that's been written on someone's psychokinesis. Like, no, no, there has to be something done. There has to be studies done, and it's been done multiple times over. Sometimes well done, sometimes not so well done, of attempting to explain these things. Because when you make a claim like this, you need evidence to back it up. And
Yeah.
that's why the most criticized thing in the world, rightfully so, is the Bible, because it's making incredible claims.
Yep.
So that's why people, just the resurrection of Jesus alone is something that should not happen in the world.
Right.
And yet it's been studied by atheists. It's been studied by policemen, lawyers, crime scene investigators, plenty other things I could bring up to see if it's actually true, to verify the truth of it. Because to make the claim that Jesus not only is God, but that he died and came back to life, that is huge. You can't just say
Extraordinary
that.
claim.
I mean, you can say it, but that doesn't mean I have to believe it.
Right.
You got to back it up.
Right. Yeah.
So it's putting yourself in there, looking at the evidence, and making an objective choice as best as possible. Because sometimes we weren't there. I
Yeah.
wasn't there when the Bell Witch was around, but I do have eyewitness reports that kind of lead me towards something was happening there.
Oh yeah. And back to previous question, or maybe I don't know. This all just kind of become just an amalgam of all the questions anyway. But
Yeah.
um, I think how Christians or Western evangelicals at least typically handle this topic is just it's it's a symptom of a greater problem where we we have such an we have such a transcendent view of God that when it comes to encountering the world and living our everyday lives, we don't actually live like God is real.
Hmm. Huh.
Because
Yeah.
what if the powers and the principalities and powers of the air and the spirits of the earth and all of these things are real? And God is literally fighting back to take back the world that is rightfully his from all of these powers. Like, I can know that and believe that in my mind, but what would it look like for me to actually live that out as a reality?
Hmm.
What should I be looking for? How should I be treating even my encounters with other people if I have this supernatural worldview? Because right, that gets into gets into divine imaging. That gets into us all being reflections of God's glory and all of these things. Again, these are ideas, things that at least to some degree most Christians claim to believe.
Uh-huh.
But do we actually live it out like these things are real?
My experience, no.
I was gonna say, I imagine our lives would look more similar to Sam and Dean Winchester's if they were but in a more Christianized version of that, because we'd be like, oh shoot, there's some spiritual activity in my sister's house, and you start looking for the signs, you get the EVPs, you're like, okay, you identify the spirit, you figure out why they're still there, and can you salt and burn their bones and make them go away? I don't know, but you know what I mean? It's like it would be like real world problems, that you'd face like every day. You're like, oh no,
Yeah.
something bad's happening in my life where I feel this negative energy. Oh shoot, it's a freaking demon. Crap. How do I get rid of them? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we would be living much more realistically. I mean, I hate to bring Supernatural up as a show, but other shows that are like the Ghost Whisperer or some other things where we'd be having regular interactions with spiritual entities, or at least general awareness.
Sure. And maybe we do, and we just miss it because we have this, we have this
A
transcendent.
veil.
We have a veil, one, but because we allow ourselves to have this transcendent view of the supernatural, we miss its imminence.
Mm. Yeah,
I'll get
well,
off my soapbox now.
that's fine. You are A-okay. So John actually brought up something I was just about to get into, in that there are several shows and other forms of media out there that have a very poor view of scripture and truth and have a very bad theology, supernatural being one of them. So, like, what would you say? Should Christians engage with the culture when certain fandoms often have a poor view of scripture and truth? And, like, just supernatural being one, we have paranormal activity where it's completely hopeless fighting these demons. Like, all that we can do is just have another film be made so we can make more money. That there's nothing that humans can actually do to fight them, which is antithetical to scripture. But go ahead.
I think I have the same answer that I do kind of in general for just engaging media in the world and culture in general is to do so with discernment. If, if you are a believer that hasn't really spent a lot of time, beyond and I'm beyond the pages of scripture, really getting into studying supernatural or even looking at like Hebrew cosmology or some of these things that help us understand what the authors actually believed about the supernatural reality that we're part of. Maybe don't engage in wrong or bad or fictional ideas of the supernatural if you don't know what the real version of the thing is.
Mm.
Once you're studied, have some discernment, have fun. Well, watch Supernatural all you want, but don't let that inform your theology.
John?
I was going to say, I try to keep in mind that a lot of the media, a lot of our entertainment is created by people who are not Christians, or who, even if there are Christians involved in the creation of it, they're not walking that line within the biblical worldview. They're playing more for the non-Christian, non-believers, but also being mindful in general that a lot of people enjoy the mythos of Christianity, but don't want to be Christians. So they play games with a lot of characters and things, kind of like Supernatural does, or Ridley Scott, Gods and Kings and things like that, where they don't really respect the source material, but they, people are still fascinated by the characters and they just want to kind of play around with it without actually being part of that worldview.
Yeah. It's stuff like Neon Genesis Evangelion, where there are beings called angels that they fight, and that when they explode, they turn into crosses. Surely Hideki Anno meant something when he was doing that. Like, no, what happened was he researched Christianity through little Jewish Kabbalist beliefs in there, and had fun with the ideas. He wasn't thinking too deeply on that because he wasn't expecting a Western audience who is more familiar with these things to actually watch his show, because this is a little before anime got more mainstream. I When you go into these things, I completely agree with you guys. It's know where you stand, then deal with the world, because they're not writing for you. And most of the time, when Christian writers end up in Hollywood or in their own personal little studios, they make crap, worthless films that I despise.
Yes, preach it.
Because it's all touchy feely goodness, and there's no real conflict at the end of the day. Instead of like wrestling with the world, which is what the world is doing without even realizing it. Like, why can't we do that? Why can't there be more competent Christian filmmakers and directors and the like out there actually engaging with these things? Well, it's because the ones who attempt to do it suck at their jobs. So Why would the world ever want to hire them? I'll get off my soapbox.
Tell me how you really feel.
I hate them. I would rather watch
Hashtag
like
Christian media sucks.
I would rather watch the entire sequel trilogy again than ever experience God's Not Dead or anything very
Ooh.
similar.
Oh, that's a burn right there.
But would you watch Discovery before you would watch God's Not Dead?
That's rough. I guess it depends on how much I hate myself that day. I guess I'm taking Discovery.
Woo!
God help me. God help me.
Spicy.
Anything else to add to this before we offend everyone?
Now we need
I was
keep
gonna say, I
going.
wish, and this is kind of, I wish that there were more Christian creators out there. Like, I would love a rated M video game based on the battles of the Bible. There's plenty of
That'd be so
war
cool.
going on that we could have a Call of Duty style, battle game based on some biblical battles. I think it would be fun. You could be Samson or something,
Yeah,
and
I
you
was
could
saying,
go
all
wreak
you gotta
havoc
do
on
is-
some people, and it
Yeah.
would be biblical.
Yeah, all we gotta do is just make Judges the game. There you go.
It'd be perfect.
But
All right.
also, I do hate the fact that there is not a lot of good Christian media out there. It kind of
awful.
drives me nuts that we don't have our own like really good Christian anime, or at least we got C.S. Lewis, we got Tolkien, we got a couple of really good books,
Yeah.
but we need some anime, we need
Sure.
some movies, we need some video games, we need something fun.
A greater question on that. I know we're completely off topic now, but whatever.
Right, why not?
That's what happens. And I'm not even named the derailer today, but here we are. Like, what happened? Seriously, what happened? Because historically, the church, right? We
Yeah.
Christians were the torch bearers for culture, for art, for writing, for sculpture, for all of these things. Now we suck at it.
Because it's being manufactured for the lowest common denominator. The ones that just want to feel good about the world. It's like, oh, we can overcome our sin and everything will work out. Well, we use that prosperity gospel without actually saying we're doing the prosperity gospel. And then everything will be fine. It's like, no, that's not how life works.
Okay, Joel Osteen, calm down.
Hey, write a situation where you tell a story where characters go through adversity and have Jesus in there. Those things can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell a good story. Whatever.
I hate to plug our books, but our books actually, I think, handle it correctly. Where we have a high view of God, but the characters face their own adversity. There's their own intrigues, but the wise old sage kind of thing is more so towards the spiritual thing, where they're going through their own walks of Christianity and they're learning their own lessons, but they still have a lot of fun on the way, beating up some demons or going to alternate dimensions or in a fantasy science fiction setting. You know what I mean? You can have fun and be a Christian too, and it doesn't have to be lame.
Gosh dang it.
Since we're derailed anyways, my fourth book, Resurrection Life, has a guy come back to life in a world that doesn't have resurrection and is told by someone else, hey, God is working with you by now. He wants you to be his. And at the end of the book, doesn't convert to Christianity because he's on the journey there. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't, because I haven't written the sequel yet, because I haven't time, because of seminary. But I didn't just have tie it in the neat little bow at the end and say, guys, you should worship God and become his, which, yeah, that's what I want.
Aesop
I
Fable,
don't
the
wanna,
Christian version.
I don't want to hold your hand and be like, this is how everything works. This is how every conversion story is. No, it takes time and effort. All right. Well, now that we're way off topic, let's get back on topic, maybe, with the power of looking at the next question. Matthew, last time John and I spoke about this, so I'll leave this exclusively to you.
Okay.
Are things like astrology, crystals, tarot reading, etc., okay for Christians to engage with?
Um, Astrology in its modern form is nonsense. However, there is a biblical precedent for the signs or for the stars and the planets and all of these things as signs. It says it in Genesis that they are for seasons and for signs and for whatever. The wise men saw what? A star, which they were looking for, by the way, because when Daniel was in Babylon teaching scribes and scholars and things like that, he told them what to look for because he knew. So, on one hand, there's kind of this biblical example of God creating the signs for stars, but it isn't this sun sign nonsense that we practice that you get in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So
The horoscopes.
yeah, that stuff. Tarot cards, I don't know. I've never seen this, so I don't really have a response.
I saw the image today and put it on there.
um, and this might be a hot take, considering that the three of us are generally more conservative-ish. But I think most things are just tools. Like a hammer. A hammer can build a house. It can also be a murder weapon. That doesn't mean that hammers are bad. And I think sometimes we get into this, well, who else uses it, or where does this come from, or XYZ, and then we're bad thinkers, right? Because that's a genetic fallacy. It's a slippery slope fallacy. It's all of these other kinds of bad thinking, which that's one of my pet peeves is Christians, at least at the pop level, are just bad thinkers. And we
Yeah.
need to be good thinkers. And we need to avoid fallacious thinking and all of these sorts of things. Because by the way, if we are God's representatives and we are bad at thinking.
We're bad representatives.
Exactly right. So, however, tarot cards, I don't see any way where Christians in good conscience could use those, because back to my previous point, if we believe that principalities and powers and all of these things are real, right? If we acknowledge the reality that we live in a supernatural world where these things exist, one must ask what forces are at play, what spirits are being attracted, and all of these sorts of things. And we should not play with fire. Crystals are literally just, they're carbon silicate crystalline structures. They're nothing, that have no power and do nothing. Knock it off.
Well said. I wish we had more time for all those points, but if you want to hear what John and I had to say last time, you can look at the last episode and listen to that one. Did I say something controversial? Did I disparage John? Probably the latter. You'll find out only by listening. So, guys, as we head off today, is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we wrap things up?
I was gonna say that even in the Bible, there was mentioned to be other forms of power, magic, spells, things that the new believers had to discard and turn away from. that there are powers that can be used for evil or that are evil in nature, and that's a caution to Christians not to be just open-minded for everything, but again to be sober and to, understand that there are other things out there spiritually. There is another
Mhm.
spiritual realm, and I would
Yeah.
love to have more discussion on the spirit world, and are there
Yeah.
ways to interact with it or see it and stuff. But just be cautious and don't get too crazy. Just be
Yeah.
aware.
That's a whole nother episode we need to do.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, even good point, John. Because like even in the Bible, right, we see them consulting the and Thummim.
And they're
You
just gonna
know,
show up out of nowhere. No foreshadowing.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and the disciples drew lots. They believed
Mhm.
there was some kind of something there. Although I will say we don't see that after the second chapter of Acts. Once we get the Spirit, we don't see a casting of lots anymore. What's that about? But that's but there are all of these things in Scripture. Where obviously the biblical authors had a much larger view of the world than we do,
Mm.
and we need to be cautious but not afraid of the supernatural and the paranormal and all of those things, right? Jesus says, "Fear not, for I am with you." Right? We believe He is immanent. The Spirit resides in all of us. We are safe, but let's not be idiots.
Yeah.
Let's be cautious, and I'll leave it there.
Perfect. But do you guys have any recommendations you'd like to offer the audience?